Viewers, welcome to TV Metro Mail. You are watching our special program. Today we have come together to create a space where we can mourn the family members, the community members, the 4 members of the same family who were killed through a targeted attack in London, Ontario. Viewers, let us watch a brief video and then we'll come back to our discussion.
In Yamna Afzal's hands, the world was filled with so much promise. Her vision, excellence, integrity, respect, and honesty.
I think about the 4 virtues that are listed on this wall, how we need to embody them, how we need to bring humanity back and continue our fight against hate.
Asad Chowdhury is the principal at the London Islamic School. 15-year-old Yamna was a student here with her brother until she graduated last year. She left behind a gift. She and her mother painted this mural. It is now her legacy.
It means the world, and it really is telling of the fact that we lost true gems of not just our school community, but community at large.
The community is crushed by the deaths of Yamna, her parents, and her grandmother. Her 9-year-old brother, the lone survivor, remains in hospital.
The family is a very integral part. They're very active members of our community.
Hassan Mustafa knows the family from the mosque. He is rocked by the revelation that police believe the family was targeted because of their faith.
As a father, I feel it's my job to protect my family. As a community leader, I feel it's my job to protect my community. And so it's tough. It's a tough day. It's a tough week.
Tonight, at the site of the attack, people paid their respects.
Honestly, I think we all feel some personal connection to this, whether or not we're from this faith, whether or not we know this family. We're all part of this community and we all care about them.
To get here today, I walked. And a couple of times I stopped and waited for the light to turn green. And I never once thought about my personal safety. And everybody deserves that same right.
From there to where a vigil was held, the hundreds in attendance listening for words of healing.
We will not cower out of fear. To this community, which has made London stronger for generations, and to all Muslim Canadians, we are with you.
We have to commit ourselves to working across party lines, with premiers, with mayors, with faith leaders, to end the kind of violence and hatred that took these lives.
Everyone hoping to one day see a world as beautiful as Yamna Afzal created.
We have a number of faith leaders with us today. We have political leaders, we have activists, we have community members, those who will talk about this issue and those who will show their respect through our today's event. Many people, they are saying that this attack, the recent attack was not on a family, Muslim family. This attack is on, the Canadian values. This attack is on Canada. So now I would like to ask our faith leaders, those who are here, this has become quite visible now that Islamophobia is real. Our Prime Minister says the other day that Islamophobia is real, the racism is real. What can we do to stop it? We know it is real for many, is from long time, but we started acknowledging it in public that it is real. So how can we stop it?
Sorry, when I heard my esteemed colleague Fareed speak, I was wondering about asking if there has been, in fact, a comprehensive advocacy ask of the federal government that the rest of us can get behind, and if it has specifics and funding requests that are adequate, and if he knows of such an advocacy ask, I think many of us need to get behind such an ask and insist that the time is now. not to use this family's deaths as a as the launch of a campaign, but to say that enough is enough and to demand action. There is much that we can do as faith leaders, certainly, and we can get to know one another first and foremost among our faiths, and get to know our people and undertake joint education of our communities. But that only goes so far in a country that is increasingly non-religious in many instances. And I guess not without skirting that responsibility, because I think it's important. I would like to get behind some kind of a national movement or campaign to actually undertake the kind of rooting out of hate that Fareed was talking about earlier, and to put in place, the necessary security protocols and others aspects of this question that is complex, but it's not unprecedented in our attempt to root out other kinds of evils in our society. So I don't know, Fareed, if you want to respond to that, but I'd really like to hear if there is an advocacy campaign that has been undertaken since 2017 that I can jump aboard on.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Reverend Brian. We'll come to Fareed Khan, but before coming to you, I think I'd like to see whether Rabbi Michael, he likes to add anything with that, or if you like to say something more about it.
Thank you, Amamul. Certainly. I think it's difficult to hear politicians all the way up to the Prime Minister, as others on this program have said, affirming that hatred, that anti-Muslim hatred, Islamophobia. Muslims know that Islamophobia is real. They don't need to be told that by the Prime Minister. Jews know that anti-Semitism is real. We don't need to be told that by the Prime Minister.
Right.
That the members of our First Nations who've been victims of such horrible crimes don't need to be told that that's happened. We know. We need, in fact, to see and to demand actions rather than words. And I will say that in this time, certainly, that when we have this revelation of the burial of these First Nations children at the Kamloops residential school, but then we see the government not applying the resolutions of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. We know that the truth is in the inaction, not in the words. That when we see words saying Islamophobia is real, but then the Prime Minister refuses to condemn this so-called laicity law in Quebec, which, while it is also anti-Semitic, is primarily an anti-Muslim law in our country. And that many politicians and community leaders have used the excuse of politics not to stand up and speak the truth about this law. I think contributes to the environment in which hate crimes happen. And we need to stand together and to stop tolerating this kind of politicking of values as opposed to acting on values from those who are supposedly our leaders. And some of that may be organizing and getting to know our neighbors better, certainly, but working also with our local political authorities to see that more candidates of color, more minority candidates, more candidates that represent these elements within the local community become more and more. We have to be politically active because we must be in this for the long run. Another speech is not going to stop the next heinous act, although I only wish that it would.
Thank you. Yeah. Just go ahead. So I think you wanted to say.
Oh, it's quite all right. There's there are many of us with what to say, and it just pains me to see that that here the Muslim community is painfully and criminally targeted. And the responses that are just words, sadly, would be familiar to almost any minority community in our country. And again, the country's making progress, but I think the jury on multiculturalism and the ability of Canada to truly carry out the respect for all communities is still out. And we need to partner with one another and work with one another. And each speak up to those we hear who make extreme statements and think they can present them as opinion and have them be acceptable. And all of us need to have the courage to stand up and say, not in my Canada. I won't allow people to speak that way about my neighbors.
Definitely, definitely. Thank you very much, Rabbi Michael Dolgin. So, Mr. Farid Khan, so before you answer to or respond back to Reverend Brian's, questions, I'd like to add one more thing to you, that now our political leaders, they are saying that they need to really do some real action or real things. So when they are talking about that real action or real things, what they are referring to?
Well, my interpretation of those words is that they've basically done very little over the last, since the Quebec City mosque attack. That the things that they have done have been window dressing. I would like to point out that we are reliving 2017 after the mosque attack, because I'm hearing the exact same things come out of the politicians' mouths that I heard in 2017. And after 2017, I and many others in the Muslim community, as well as the broader anti-racism activist community, called on the Justin Trudeau government to take action, to take meaningful and decisive action, put policies and programs in place to target hate and root it out, to address white supremacy. And all we got was thoughts and prayers, and we should be thankful that they attended our vigils and they came into our mosques and into our cultural centers. Boy, that was really helpful. I'm sorry, I'm being sarcastic, but that's the way I feel. With respect to what Reverend Brian said, asked about, Canadians United Against Hate was started in 2019, but I started working on a project, an anti-racism project, before the 2017 mosque shooting, and then it became even more urgent after that. And I ended up eventually writing a report, which I shared with MPs and a few cabinet ministers, and I got polite receptions. We'll look at it, but I never heard back. There were 18 recommendations, concrete actions that the government could take to address issues of hate. And the number one thing that I was calling for was a national government-led strategy by the federal government in conjunction with provincial governments to combat hate, which included public education programs, which included the targeting of white supremacist groups, which included the criminalizing of hate speech more easily than it is now, which included reinstatement of a clause in the Human Rights Act, which was removed by the Harper government, which made it easier to bring hate crime claims before the Human Rights Tribunal. There was 18 recommendations in there. And I don't have the financial capacity to put a budget on it, but I looked at the way, as a comparison, that the parties campaigned during the election and how much money they spent on their campaigns, and particularly their advertising campaigns. So a budget for that, I would think, in order to get things done effectively, would be somewhere on the order of $150 million a year. Okay. Now, elections, along with whatever the parties spend, cost somewhere in the neighborhood of $350 million a year. Okay. Every time there's a federal election. So, and this money would not be given to local groups who are not equipped to take on this sort of a task, but it would be government money that would be spent the same way that the government spent money and worked with provincial governments to address the COVID-19 pandemic. So if you're looking for these 18 recommendations, I've reposted them on the Canadians United Against Hate page on Facebook. Please look for it and find it. And you can adopt it. And Reverend Brian, if you want to help with that, Rabbi Michael, if you want to help with that, and the networks that you're involved in, this needs a networked approach. It needs people to come together and say to all our politicians, regardless of party, but particularly the members who are in government, you failed us. You failed the Muslim community, and the evidence of that failure is the blood of Muslims who were killed. So I will stop there.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think we have, as you said, that the government, they promise, that political leaders, they come up with different ideas, plans, but those are not working, and people may ask whether they are really thinking from their real perspective. So we have a young Sejoni Rahman. Sejoni Rahman, what do you think about that? Because you have some experience working in the system, I think, in the way the government works here in Canada. So where is the problem? Because in 2021, our political leaders are saying we need to do real action. It means that before 2021, we were not with the real action. We were doing something else. So what is your take on this?
Thank you. And I completely agree with everything again that Mr. Farid Khan, you just shared. I wish you could see me. I was like applauding in a lot of places because I completely agree. And it's exactly that. I think that I do a lot of work in the community with young people, and I see the real impacts of systems on young people and my community on a regular day-to-day basis. And when government says it's time for real action, I don't know how to take that as and what they mean, because we have heard it many, many times before. Something happens and we hear it and then nothing. I think that it's been too long, and there's no more time for this type of lip service or this sort of performative allyship. It's time to actually look at your policies, look at your institutions, and see how every single one of this is impacting Muslims and marginalized groups and Indigenous folks and Black folks and all intersections of identities. How are they impacting the communities? Talk to the community, engage with the communities. I mean, I think sometimes there's a tendency for big institutions to only go to big players. Engage with your grassroots organizations, engage with people, engage with your faith-based organizations that are working with real people every single day. They're much closer to the solutions than you think. They already know what their communities need and how to reach them and how to support them. Reach out to them, engage to them, listen to their lived experiences, and then start to think about how you can advance that work and how you can better shape your institutions to be user-centric, for it to actually support the people that it needs to support. Talk to your communities, do that, take the real action, put in an effort to actually understand the magnitude of what's happening and how your systems are broken and not working. Or maybe it is working, maybe it's designed, I'm being sarcastic, but maybe it is designed to exactly function this way and serve certain people. But the reality is it's not serving a lot of people in this country as well as it should. And so it's time to self-reflect and then start to change your systems. And like Mr. Farid Khan said, network approach, connecting, coming together, uniting, and engaging across sectors, across communities to advance this work. It's long overdue. Communities are exhausted. In my work with young people are exhausted. Young people are traumatized to see what's happening. They're processing grief. They're trying to process this trauma and try to understand what this means for their families and for themselves. Young kids as young as in elementary school, and that shouldn't be the case for anybody. And it's heartbreaking to see that. And I'm really happy to see a lot of allies here today. And if there's allies that are listening, you have a role to play as well. Use your privilege where you have privilege to bring these concerns to the surface. Leverage your networks and speak up. The onus shouldn't always be on the community to teach and speak about these issues. Come together, demonstrate your allyship as well in places where you can and within your networks.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sejani. I understand that, whenever we talk about this, whenever we think about that, how to address or tackle the issue, we talk about we need to mobilize people, we need to mobilize resources, or even alliances and allies. We talk about allies. So my personal experience, when I talk to the, religious leaders or faith leaders, I feel things are quite, on track, because whatever they are saying, that makes sense. But unfortunately, when the followers, what they are doing or their action doesn't make any sense to me. So, and this crime which has happened last week in Ontario, that is also, from the hatred, So I don't understand whether it is from the education they are not having. This is my personal question now. That I like to know that where is the problem in the system, that people, because hatred comes from where? This, many people, they like to ask, is it only because that somebody else is, they look different? It is only that, or there are some other issues, or people are not following properly the religion that our faith leaders are preaching? So I'd like to get some knowledge from our faith leaders from this perspective. So let me start with the Rabbi Michael.
I appreciate that perspective, and it's a difficult concept, because religion is a very powerful tool. Many of us are on here because we are believers, because we actually believe in religion, and it plays a guiding role in our lives. But religion also can be used as a tool. People are moved powerfully by symbols. And so just like religion can be used to do enormous good, it's also done to bring about evil in the world by people misusing religious symbols and religious tools in the service of power, and in the service of themselves rather than in service to the divine one. And I think that is a human problem. And so it's one that each of us within our own faith communities needs to fight within our community. We need to stand up to those in our community who are misusing our traditions. There's after this horrible crime this month, there was a text from Jewish tradition that I kept thinking of. It's from our oral tradition in Sanhedrin chapter 4, and it asked the question, according to our stories, where humanity was created, starting with one person. The question is asked, why was humanity created just in one person? And there are two answers given. One of them is to remember that when one human life is destroyed, it's as if an entire universe was destroyed. And so we cannot underestimate the power, nor describe the heinous act that took place this week, and the long-term and painful consequences of that act. And the second reason that's given why humanity was created starting from one person would be because, so that no one can say my ancestors are better than someone else's. So we've talked about an absolutely white supremacy is a massive problem. And it's an extension of a supremacist ideology that is dangerous anywhere we find it. And so I really do believe that we need to stand up and stand out. It is difficult in religious communities for the progressive voices in that community to stand up to those voices that present themselves as traditionalist. And we need to have the courage to do so and to demand better. Each of us within our faith community demand better in the name of religion.
Thank you. Thank you, Rabbi Michael. Reverend Brian, do you like to add something with that?
Yes, I agree completely with what Michael just said about the progressives needing to have more courage and encourage one another to speak out when traditionalists or so-called conservatives in our primarily white Christian communities in particular speak as if they know the mind of God in a way that is impossible to know. And the God whose mind they happen to know seems to be pretty much aligned with their own will. And that is a troublesome alignment for people who confuse religion and ideology. And it seems to me that we need to teach our people. Let me say that the Truth and Reconciliation Commission in Canada was 20 years after an initial royal proclamation, a royal commission as well, that worked on the same issues, produced an immense report, and was basically shelved in 1996. And it seems to me that it takes a long time for communities to catch up to the leaders that speak on their behalf. And that to me means, particularly in more liberal circles, that while leaders like Michael and I might speak for our communities, not everyone in our community agrees with us. And not everyone in our community feels as strongly as we do about cooperation, interfaith conversation, collaboration, and so on, and about the rooting out of hatred, because there's people who do believe that, for instance, my religion, Christianity, is the supreme religion, rather than just one among many who carry the same roots from Abraham and the three religions anyway, and therefore ought to see one another as brothers and sisters. Not only is Adam the first descendant, but we have the same faith descendant for our three religions. And it seems to me that we don't talk about that a whole lot, certainly not enough, and nor do we root out or seek out the collaboration that's so desperately needed. I appreciate what Fareed said. I'm going to be going to the Canadians Against United Against Hate website, and I'm going to be finding out what's being advocated for, and I'm going to share that message with people that I know within the Christian community who are advocates and social justice minded people, and we're going to try to mount a campaign. It seems that the TRC has led the Canadian society in the last 7 years to embrace what's been spoken about for 50 years. And it seems as if we now have a National Indigenous Month, Heritage Month. We have an Asian Heritage Month. We have a Black History Month. And maybe we have a Pride Month. And now maybe we need something to honor and recognize and lift up the contributions of the Muslim community, the Islamic community in Canada, in a similar way. That's just one of my thoughts among many.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Reverend Brian. So we will wrap it up. Before we wrap it up, I would like to, ask Fareed Khan that whether he wants to add something or not with that, where is the problem?
Okay. Before I answer that, I would like to tell everybody here, if you don't know, Muslims have been on this continent since the times of slavery. The first Muslims were brought here as slaves. The first free Muslims arrived in Canada in the 1850s. And so the blood of Muslims is soaked into this land, and anybody who looks at a Muslim and thinks they don't belong, no, we do belong. We do belong just as well as any other Canadian, because we've been here for that long. with respect to where the problem rises, to follow on some of what Reverend Brian and Rabbi Michael said, unfortunately, I think that in some ways, fear of the other is hardwired into our DNA as we get older. If you look at children, babies, when they're playing like 2, 3, 4 years old, they play together. They don't look at the color of the other child's skin or anything to treat them differently. Like there's joy when they spend time together, but it's when we get older and we get pulled into being socialized in whatever society we're in, is when we start to develop biases. I'll admit that I had biases when I was growing up. For example, I never ever thought about that for a minute, when I was a teenager in my 20s. And yet, as I got older, I realized there's more in common than there are differences. And that's the thing that we have to try and do. We have to galvanize all people who are involved, faith communities, social justice activists, indigenous communities, Black communities, and so forth. All these organizations to come together and tell the politicians, you know what, we're not having any of this crap anymore. You're gonna do what you are supposed to do, which is lead, and you're gonna lead the way we want you to lead on these issues. Because what we've had is platitudes. What we've had is political manipulation. And I know a lot of Muslims who feel like their vote has been taken for granted by politicians, but particularly by the liberals who get the vast majority of the Muslim vote. We've had 150 years of governments between the conservatives and the liberals, back and forth. And I'll tell everyone here, I got my start in the political scene working for the PC party in Ontario when it was still a moderate party during the Bill Davis era. And as the party shifted further and further to the right, both provincially and federally, I ended up leaving it. I've also worked for the NDP on campaigns, and I've worked for the Liberals. So I've seen every party from the inside. And frankly, I'm going to say that, we've had conservatives and liberals for the last 153 years. Let's give it a chance to the NDP. They can't do any worse, Basically, that's my argument. How much worse could they do than the conservatives or the liberals? The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting different results. By that measure, Canadian voters are insane, because all they've done is go back and forth between the conservatives and the liberals. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Farid Khan. At the end of the day, we all, depend on the political action or political parties or leaders. So that is definitely, that's a good thing. But unfortunately, if they are not working or their system is not functioning the way we expect, it is unfortunate for us. I think we can now conclude our session if there is no other concern that we can discuss. In that case, I would like to. Okay, so Farid Khan.
Just one thing. I would like to share something I wrote after the Quebec City Mosque massacre. I shared this at the vigil in Ottawa the other day, and I'd like to share it with you. We are one. Our world speaks to us in many languages, but it speaks only in one voice. It's the voice that speaks in the language of compassion, the parlance of hope and trust, the poetry of wisdom, in the authentic expression of the soul, but it's always the same voice. It's the voice of the generations that came before us who are speaking through us, and the voice of our descendants waiting to be born into a better world. It's the small voice in the deepest silence of our souls saying to us, we are one. It's the voice saying we are connected, regardless of our tribe, regardless of our skin, regardless of our belief, regardless of our language, regardless of our sexual identity, regardless of our nation, regardless of our blood, we are one. It's the voice of our emancipation from the darkness of creation, a beacon to guide us and open for us the door to an enlightened, inclusive, and peaceful future, where despite our differences, we are one.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, Farid Khan. Now, I would like to request because this program is powered by PACE, Progressive Action for Community Empowerment. The PACE President, Mr. Mustafa Mahmood, I would like to request him to make his concluding remarks, and then we'll conclude our session.
Thank you. There is not much left to be said because, yes, we all understand that no mourning can bring them back. People who are gone, they're gone. And this is that's the thing. But as I like very much the other day, also listening to Mr. Farid Khan, he said that people are children. When they are born, they're not racist. They play together. They don't maybe surprised when see another color, the child of another color, another tradition. But they play together. They don't ask the questions. So how come this young man, 21 years old, he ruined his life, right? Also, so how come that he just brewed this ideology? It happened slowly, like somewhere he has heard some, maybe politician, maybe some celebrity, maybe somebody's just gave him this ideology that those people are bad. But if we just look closely, I was surprised to know that in US, just these random shooters, the time to time they go some places and shoot people. They kill more people than all the time Muslims kill the Muslim terrorists. That is the fact, right? So we can't say that Muslims are this or other people this. So we have to to my opinion, that in this multicultural society, we have to ask ourselves what we can do. There are two levels. One is institutional level. There's politicians, religious leaders, centers of influence, and also ourselves, just common people, because what we can do to just uproot this hate, all this Islamophobia and everything. Of course, political leaders should take some action, and do also we as NGOs and other, we can do as much as we can. We just mourning and remembering them, but everyone from their place, they have to do their part to so that we can live in a society in harmony, and have trust to other religions. So I thank everybody to just for joining this, spending some time mourning with us and spending your time. And so you came forward and shared your thoughts with us. So I cordially thank you. We appreciate very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mustafa. Thank you very much, Reverend Brian, Mr. Abu Mohsin, and our other guests. We love Canada. We need Canada where every family, everybody should freely walk on the street with their loved ones without any fear. So definitely we need to do some work, and we are working on that. Our faith leaders, they are in support of the whole thing. Thank you.